Show us what that thing between your legs does, alien beauties. The crude shout from a protester outside the United Nations headquarters in New York City pierced the tense atmosphere. Inside, Earth's governing council sat in stunned silence, processing the UNA's delegation's shocking ultimatum. Galen, the tall, cerulean-skinned representative of the technologically advanced alien species, stood impassively before the council. His large, multifaceted eyes reflected the harsh fluorescent lighting as he reiterated their demand. Humanity must prove its genetic compatibility with the UNAs, or face immediate exclusion from galactic trade networks. The council members exchanged worried glances. Earth's fledgling position in the interstellar community hung by a thread. Decades of technological leaps since first contact had propelled humanity into the stars, but they were still newcomers on the galactic stage. Losing access to alien markets and technology would be catastrophic. We require a practical demonstration of human sexual intercourse with willing UNA's volunteers, Galen stated, his translator conveying the aliens' matter-of-fact tone. This is non-negotiable. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. The UNAs were known for their strict cultural taboos surrounding reproduction. This request was unprecedented. In the ensuing chaos, one name was on everyone's lips: Stephen Turner. The renowned xenobiologist was urgently summoned from his research station in the Atacama Desert. As his hypersonic transport streaked across the sky, Stephen's mind raced. What could have prompted this bizarre demand? Upon arrival, Stephen was whisked into a secure briefing room. The weight of humanity's future settled on his shoulders as he learned the true nature of his assignment. He was to select a small team of human males to participate in this unprecedented compatibility test aboard the UNAS mothership. As Stephen began the selection process, he uncovered a startling truth. Galen, in a moment of surprising vulnerability, revealed the UNA's hidden agenda. Their species faced a severe genetic bottleneck, threatening their very existence. They believed human DNA might hold the key to their survival. If the compatibility test proved successful, Galen explained, his alien features softening, we intend to propose a large-scale breeding program between our species. Stephen's mind reeled. The implications were staggering. This mission could fundamentally alter the course of both human and UNA's civilizations. The fate of two species now rested on the outcome of what amounted to an interstellar orgy. As news of the UNA's request leaked, anti-alien protests erupted globally. Xenophobic fears, long simmering beneath the surface of human society, boiled over. Stephen and his team were forced to conduct their work in secret, racing against time and public opinion. In the midst of the chaos, Stephen found himself drawn to Galen. The alien's otherworldly beauty and keen intelligence challenged everything Stephen thought he knew about extraterrestrial life. Their late-night discussions about genetics and the future of their species left Stephen questioning his own preconceptions. As the day of departure approached, Stephen stood before his hastily assembled team. 5 human males, chosen for their genetic diversity and psychological stability, looked to him for guidance. The weight of their responsibility was palpable. "Gentlemen," Stephen addressed them, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil, "what we do here will shape the future of humanity and the UNAs. The cosmos itself waits to see what that thing between our legs can do." With a final glance at Galen, whose alien features now seemed almost familiar, Stephen led his team towards the shuttle. As they boarded the sleek vessel bound for the UNA's mothership, Stephen couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something monumental. The fate of humanity's galactic standing, and possibly its genetic future, would be determined by what transpired in the alien bedchambers above. The shuttle docked with a soft thud, and Stephen felt his stomach lurch as artificial gravity took hold. He led his team through the airlock, heart pounding with anticipation and a touch of fear. The UNA's mothership's cavernous docking bay stretched before them, its sleek architecture unlike anything on Earth. Galen stood at the head of a small, welcoming party, his multifaceted eyes gleaming under the bay's soft lighting. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Turner," he said, his translator conveying a tone of formal politeness. "We are grateful for your participation in this crucial endeavor." Stephen nodded, acutely aware of the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. We're ready to begin, Galen. What's our first step? A thorough medical examination, Galen replied, gesturing towards a nearby corridor. This way, please. As they walked, Stephen couldn't help but marvel at the ship's interior. Smooth, pearlescent walls curved overhead, pulsing with a soft bioluminescence that seemed to respond to their presence. The air held a faint, sweet scent reminiscent of Earth's springtime blossoms. They entered a vast medical bay, its layout reminiscent of a terrestrial hospital, but filled with unfamiliar, advanced equipment. A team of Una scientists awaited them, their cerulean skin a shade darker than Galen's. Please, make yourselves comfortable, one of the scientists said, indicating a row of examination tables. As Stephen and his team underwent the non-invasive scans, he observed the Una scientists. Their movements were quick and efficient, but he couldn't miss the subtle tremors of excitement in their hands, the way their eyes darted eagerly between the humans and their equipment. Galen, Stephen called out, his curiosity piqued. These scans seem quite extensive. Are you looking for something specific? Galen hesitated before responding. We are gathering comprehensive data to ensure optimal conditions for the compatibility test, nothing more. But Stephen's suspicions deepened. The intensity of the scans, the barely concealed excitement of the Unas, it all pointed to something beyond a simple compatibility check. As the examinations concluded, tension among the human participants became palpable. Dr. Elias Reeves, a molecular biologist from Stephen's team, voiced his concerns. Stephen, are we certain about the safety of this procedure? The ethical implications alone are staggering. Before Stephen could respond, another team member, Dr. Amelia Chen, chimed in. Not to mention the potential physical risks. We're dealing with completely alien biology here. Stephen took a deep breath, recognizing the need to steady his team. I understand your concerns, he said, keeping his voice low and calm. But remember why we're here. This isn't just about proving compatibility, it's about securing humanity's place in the galactic community. The risks are significant, yes, but so are the potential benefits. His words seemed to have the desired effect, as the team's nervous energy settled into a more focused commitment. Galen approached, gesturing for Stephen to follow. They moved to a quieter corner of the medical bay, away from the others. Dr. Turner, Galen began, his voice lowered. I must explain the test protocols in more detail. As Galen outlined the procedure, Stephen's eyebrows rose in surprise. Simulated mating scenarios? That's more elaborate than I expected. We believe it necessary for thorough data collection, Galen replied. Then with a hint of hesitation, he added, I will be your partner for this test. Stephen blinked, caught off guard. You? But surely as the mission leader, you should be overseeing the entire operation. As the highest-ranking Unas present, it is my duty to be directly involved in this crucial experiment, Galen explained, a note of finality in his voice. As they rejoined the others, Stephen noticed unfamiliar equipment being wheeled into an adjacent room. The devices hummed with an otherworldly energy, their purpose unclear but undoubtedly significant. What's that for? Stephen asked, nodding towards the machinery. Galen's response was swift, almost rehearsed. Standard monitoring equipment, nothing to be concerned about. But Stephen's instincts told him otherwise. The secrecy, the elaborate setup, it all pointed to the Unas having far greater plans than they were letting on. One by one, the human participants and their Unas partners entered separate chambers. Stephen watched as the doors closed behind his team members, each face a mix of nervousness and perseverance. Finally, only Stephen and Galen remained. As they approached their assigned room, Stephen caught a last glimpse of the mysterious equipment being arranged in the observation area. A chill ran down his spine as the implications of what they were about to do fully hit him. The door slid shut behind them with a soft hiss, sealing them in a space that was part clinical examination room, part alien boudoir. Soft, ambient lighting pulsed in soothing patterns, and the air was filled with a subtle, sweet aroma that Stephen couldn't quite place. Shall we begin? Galen asked, his multifaceted eyes fixed on Stephen. Stephen nodded, his scientific mind battling with a sudden, unexpected flutter of attraction. Galen's otherworldly beauty, so alien yet somehow alluring, caught him off guard. As they began to explore each other's physiology, Stephen's trained eye noticed peculiarities in Una's anatomy that he hadn't anticipated. The texture of Galen's skin, the placement of sensory organs, the intricate patterns that seemed to shift with emotional states. It was all fascinating from a biological standpoint. But as their interaction progressed, following the predetermined stages of the experiment, Stephen made a startling discovery. Hidden beneath layers of complex alien biology was a remarkable similarity in genetic structure. It was subtle, easily missed, but to Stephen's expert eye, it hinted at a shared ancestry so ancient it boggled the mind. "Galen," Stephen gasped, pulling back slightly, "do you realize what this means? The implications for both our species?" Before Galen could respond, a piercing alarm shattered the intimate atmosphere. Red lights pulsed urgently, and a voice boomed through hidden speakers in a language Stephen didn't understand. Galen's eyes widened in what Stephen recognized as fear. "We must go, now!" As they hurriedly redressed, Stephen's mind raced. "What's happening?" "The Krathar," Galen said, his voice tight with tension. "They've found us." The door slid open, revealing a scene of controlled chaos in the corridor beyond. Una's crew members rushed past, their movements precise despite the obvious urgency. Stephen's team emerged from their chambers, looking confused and disheveled. He quickly gathered them, noting the mix of awe and concern on their faces, clear indicators of the varied experiences they just had. As the humans regrouped, Galen conferred with other Una's officials, their rapid exchanges punctuated by gestures towards view screens showing an approaching fleet of angular, predatory-looking ships. The mothership shuddered as its defense systems activated. Stephen felt the deck plate vibrate beneath his feet, a tangible reminder of the escalating danger. Galen turned to Stephen, his alien features set in fierce dedication. "Dr. Turner, I'm afraid our experiment has been cut short, but perhaps it's not too late. The data we've gathered, combined with your unexpected discovery, it might be the key to both our species' survival." Stephen looked at his team, then back at Galen. The full weight of their situation pressed down on him. What had started as a bizarre diplomatic mission had now become a fight for survival, with the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance. As alarms continued to blare and the mothership prepared for potential combat, Stephen realized that the true test was just beginning. The compatibility they sought would now be proven not in simulated mating chambers, but in the crucible of an interstellar conflict. Conflict. The ship lurched violently, nearly throwing Stephen off his feet. Galen steadied him with a three-fingered hand. "The Krathar," Galen explained, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the flashing red emergency lights. "A hostile species that views our alliance as a threat. We must move quickly." Galen ushered Stephen and his team through winding corridors, past Una's crew members rushing to their battle stations. The humans struggled to keep pace with the aliens' swift, fluid movements. They reached a secure chamber deep within the ship. View screens displayed the approaching Krathar fleet, a mass of angular, predatory vessels filled with weapons. "Our shields are holding. For now," Galen said, interfacing with a console. "But we're outgunned." Stephen's mind raced. "What about Earth's orbital defense network? Could it support you?" Galen's eyes widened. "An excellent suggestion. Can you establish contact?" Stephen nodded, pulling out his comm device. Within moments, he was connected to Earth's military command. "This is Dr. Stephen Turner aboard the Una's vessel. We're under attack by a hostile alien force, requesting immediate support from orbital defenses." There was a brief pause before a gruff voice responded. "Understood, Dr. Turner. Repositioning satellites now. Stand by for targeting data." As Earth's defensive grid came online, the Krathar unleashed their first salvo. The Una's ship shuddered under the impact, its energy barriers flaring bright. "Shields at 80%, an Una's technician called out. Stephen turned to his team. "We need to help however we can. Dr. Chen, assist with damage control. Dr. Reeves, see if you can integrate our targeting data with their systems." The humans sprang into action, working alongside the Una's crew. Their quick thinking and adaptability drew appreciative glances from the aliens. A brief lull in the battle allowed Galen to pull Stephen aside. "There's something you should know," the alien said, lowering his voice. "We have a prototype weapon capable of disabling the Krathar fleet non-lethally, but it requires a unique energy source we can't produce." Stephen's brow furrowed. "What kind of energy?" "A bioelectric field with specific properties," Galen explained. "Our scientists have been unable to generate it artificially." Stephen's eyes widened as he recalled his earlier observations about human Una's compatibility. What if we combined human and Una's bioelectric fields, the genetic similarities I noticed earlier? Could that be the key? Galen's alien features registered shock, then consideration. "It's possible, but how would we—" Another impact rocked the ship, cutting off Galen's words. "Shields at 60%, the technician shouted. "Krathar preparing another assault." Stephen locked eyes with Galen. "The compatibility test we were running. If we use that same connection but focus on generating bioelectric energy—" Galen nodded, understanding dawning. "It's unorthodox, but it might work. We'll need to modify the weapon quickly." As Una scientists scrambled to reconfigure the prototype, Stephen gathered his team. "I know this is far beyond what any of us signed up for," he said, meeting each of their eyes. "But right now, we're Earth's only line of defense. Are you with me?" Despite the risks, despite the intimate nature of what he was asking, Stephen saw only grit in their faces. They nodded in unison. The modified weapon was brought to a large chamber. Human Una's pairs positioned themselves around it, Stephen and Galen at the forefront. "Krathar fleet in firing range," an Una's officer called out over the ship's comm system. Stephen took a deep breath, looking at Galen. The alien's cerulean skin seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Ready?" Stephen asked. Galen nodded. "Together." They joined hands, focusing on the connection they had forged earlier. Around them, the other pairs did the same. The chamber filled with a soft, pulsating glow as their combined bioelectric fields began to power the weapon. On the screens, the Krathar ships loomed ever closer, weapons primed. The glow intensified, the air crackling with energy. Stephen felt a deep, resonant connection, not just with Galen, but with every being in the room, human and Una's alike. Just as the Krathar were about to fire, the weapon reached full power. A burst of energy erupted from the Una ship, engulfing the enemy fleet in a shimmering wave. For a moment, everything seemed frozen in time. Then, one by one, the Krathar ships went dark, their systems completely shut down by the non-lethal pulse. Cheers erupted throughout the Una's vessel. Humans and aliens embraced, caught up in the euphoria of their shared victory. As the celebration continued around them, Stephen found himself still holding Galen's hand. The connection between them felt stronger than ever, transcending biology and species. "We did it," Stephen said, his voice filled with wonder. Galen's multifaceted eyes seemed to sparkle. "No, Stephen, we did it. Together." As the implications of their victory began to sink in, Stephen realized that everything had changed. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough or a military triumph. It was the dawn of a new era in galactic relations, with humanity and the Unas at its center. And at the heart of it all was the connection he now shared with Galen, a bond that promised to complicate and enrich his life in ways he never could have imagined. As the Una's ship prepared to address the galactic community, Stephen knew that the real challenges and the real adventures were just beginning. The euphoria of their victory against the Krathar was short-lived as a new challenge emerged, one that threatened to unravel everything they had accomplished. Stephen's comm device buzzed urgently, cutting through the celebratory atmosphere on the Una's ship. The message from Earth's governing council was terse and alarming. Global protests against alien involvement had spiraled out of control, with violent riots erupting in major cities across the planet. "We need you back on Earth immediately, Dr. Turner." The council representative's voice crackled through the device. "Your expertise is crucial in quelling this unrest and explaining the benefits of our alliance with the Unas." Stephen's heart sank as he looked at Galen, whose multifaceted eyes reflected a mix of concern and understanding. The connection between them, so recently forged and strengthened through their shared ordeal, would now be tested by the fears and doubts of humanity. "I have to go back," Stephen said, his voice heavy with reluctance. Galen nodded, placing a three-fingered hand on Stephen's shoulder. "We'll go together. A small delegation of Unas will accompany you. Perhaps seeing us in person will help ease some of the tension." As they boarded the shuttle for the journey back to Earth, Stephen gathered his team for a quick briefing. The mood was somber, a stark contrast to their earlier triumph. "This isn't going to be easy," Stephen warned. "We're facing fear and mistrust on a global scale. Our job is to show the world that this alliance isn't just beneficial, it's necessary for our survival." Dr. Chen spoke up, her face etched with grit. "What's our strategy?" Stephen glanced at Galen before responding. "We're going to organize public demonstrations, show them concrete examples of how human Unas cooperation can improve their lives. Medicine, technology, environmental restoration. We need to make the benefits tangible." The shuttle ride was tense, filled with hushed discussions and hurried preparations. Stephen and Galen huddled over a data pad, refining their approach for the press conference that awaited them. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, Stephen's stomach tightened. Through the shuttle's viewport, he could see the crowds gathering at the landing site, a sea of faces divided between hope and hostility. The landing was smooth, but the reception was anything but. As the shuttle doors opened, a cacophony of cheers and jeers assaulted them. Security forces formed a protective cordon, struggling to maintain order as Stephen, his team, and the Unas delegation made their way towards the hastily constructed stage. Cameras flashed and drones buzzed overhead, capturing every moment of this historic and contentious event. Stephen took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The press conference began with Stephen presenting evidence of the Krathar threat. Holographic displays showed the alien fleet that had nearly invaded Earth, followed by footage of the Unas-human alliance repelling the attack. "This is why we need each other," Stephen explained, his voice carrying across the restless crowd. "The galaxy is filled with wonders, yes, but also dangers. Together, we're stronger than we could ever be apart." Galen stepped forward, his alien presence causing a ripple of murmurs through the audience. With graceful movements, he activated a small device. A beam of light shot out, coalescing into a swirling vortex of water. "This technology," Galen explained, his voice translated through earpieces worn by the human attendees, "can purify contaminated water sources in minutes. Imagine clean water for every community on your planet." The demonstration had a visible impact. Journalists leaned forward, their cameras focusing on the miraculous device. Even some of the protesters seemed to waver, their expressions shifting from suspicion to curiosity. But as the mood began to shift, a commotion erupted at the edge of the crowd. A group of extremists, their faces contorted with rage, broke through the security line. They surged towards the stage, brandishing makeshift weapons and shouting anti-alien slogans. Time seemed to slow as Stephen saw one of the attackers lunge at Galen, a jagged piece of metal glinting in his hand. Without thinking, Stephen threw himself between Galen and the assailant. Pain exploded across Stephen's side as the weapon found its mark. He stumbled, aware of screams and shouts around him, but focused only on Galen's safety. As security forces subdued the attacker, Stephen felt Galen's arms supporting him. He looked up into those alien eyes, seeing fear and gratitude mingled there. "Why?" Galen asked, his voice trembling slightly. Stephen managed a weak smile. "Because that's what allies do, what friends do." The world began to fade around him, but Stephen was aware of being lifted, of urgent voices calling for medical assistance. As consciousness slipped away, his last thought was of the camera drones hovering overhead, capturing every moment of this unplanned demonstration of human Unas unity. He awoke to the sterile environment of a medical facility, the sharp scent of antiseptic filling his nostrils. Stephen blinked, his vision clearing to reveal Galen seated beside his bed, those multifaceted eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You're awake," Galen said, relief evident in his voice. "How do you feel?" Stephen attempted to sit up, wincing at the twinge in his side. Like I picked a fight with a Krathar warship. What happened after I was hit? Galen's expression softened. Your act of bravery was broadcast across the globe. It sparked a significant shift in public opinion. Many who were skeptical of our alliance now see it in a new light. As Galen spoke, Stephen became aware of a warm sensation spreading from his wounded side. He glanced down to see Galen's hand gently pressed against the bandages, a soft blue glow emanating from beneath his fingers. Una's healing techniques, Galen explained, noticing Stephen's curious look. They're accelerating your recovery. Stephen's heart raced at the intimate contact, the connection between them seeming to deepen with each passing moment. He was about to speak when a commotion outside the room caught their attention. A nurse entered, looking flustered. Dr. Turner, Mr. Galen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation developing. The media is demanding a statement, and there are reports of a new protest movement forming. They're calling themselves human supremacists. Stephen and Galen exchanged worried glances. Their victory against the Krathar had been hard won, but it seemed the real battle for Earth's future was only just beginning. As they prepared to face this new challenge, Stephen realized that the bond between him and Galen, and by extension between humans and Unas, would be the key to navigating the turbulent times ahead. The fate of two species now rested on their ability to bridge the gap between worlds, both on a global scale and in the depths of their own hearts. Stephen's recovery was swift, thanks to the combination of Una's healing techniques and advanced human medicine. Within days, he was back on his feet, albeit with a slight tenderness in his side that served as a constant reminder of the challenges they faced. As he and Galen prepared for the global town hall meeting, Stephen couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over him. The attack at the press conference had been a stark reminder of the opposition they faced, and he knew that convincing the world of the benefits of the human-Unas alliance would be no easy task. Are you ready for this? Galen asked, her multifaceted eyes scanning Stephen's face with concern. Stephen nodded, adjusting his tie. As ready as I'll ever be. Let's just hope we can get through this without any more incidents. They arrived at the broadcast station, flanked by a small security detail comprised of both humans and Unas. The building buzzed with activity, technicians and producers scurrying about as they made final preparations for the live global broadcast. As they were ushered into the main studio, Stephen took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The set was impressive, a circular stage surrounded by screens that would display questions and comments from viewers around the world. The broadcast began, and Stephen stepped up to the podium. He looked directly into the camera, acutely aware that billions of eyes were upon him. Good evening, citizens of Earth, he began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. Today, I want to talk to you about the future, a future that's brighter than we ever imagined, thanks to our alliance with the Unas. As Stephen spoke, he could see the screens lighting up with comments and questions from viewers. Some were supportive, others skeptical, but all were engaged. He delved into the advancements they'd made, revolutionary medical treatments that were already saving lives, environmental restoration projects that were reversing centuries of damage, and clean energy solutions that promised to end dependence on fossil fuels. Galen stepped forward next, activating a small device she held in her hand. This, she explained, her words instantly translated for the global audience, is a universal translator. With this technology, language barriers will become a thing of the past, allowing us to communicate and collaborate more effectively than ever before. As Galen demonstrated the device, Stephen noticed a commotion near the back of the studio. At first, he dismissed it as technical difficulties, but then he saw the fear in the eyes of one of the technicians. Something was wrong. Suddenly, the studio lights flickered and the screens went dark. Stephen's heart raced as he realized what was happening. They were under attack. Armed individuals burst into the studio, their faces covered and weapons raised. "Nobody move!" one of them shouted, his voice filled with hatred. "This broadcast is over!" Stephen's mind raced, assessing the situation. He quickly glanced around the studio, his scientific mind cataloging potential resources. Without hesitation, he grabbed Galen's arm and pulled her behind a nearby equipment rack. "We need to protect the others," Stephen whispered urgently. He began gathering cables and metal components, his fingers working swiftly to construct a makeshift barrier. Galen watched in amazement as Stephen's impromptu shield took shape. "Impressive," she murmured, her eyes darting between Stephen's work and the armed intruders, who were now taking control of the broadcast equipment. The leader of the group, a tall man with cold eyes, stepped up to the main camera. "People of Earth," he began, his voice dripping with venom. "I am Marcus Graves of the Terran Purity Front. We're here to expose the truth about the so-called alliance with these alien invaders." As Graves continued his tirade, Stephen noticed something odd about the device one of the TPF members was carrying. He leaned close to Galen, whispering, "That's their jamming equipment. Look at the modulation pattern. It's not stable." Galen's eyes widened in understanding. "If we can exploit that instability, we might be able to restore communications." While Graves ranted about alleged UNAS atrocities, showing clearly doctored footage on the screens, Stephen and Galen worked silently. Using components from Galen's translator and Stephen's knowledge of Earth communication systems, they cobbled together a countermeasure. Outside the studio, Captain Sarah Baker of the Human UNAS security team received a garbled transmission. "Under attack. TPF. Hostages." The message was fragmentary, but it was enough. She immediately began coordinating with local law enforcement, devising a plan to retake the studio without endangering the hostages. Inside, Stephen decided to buy time. He stood up, hands raised. "Mr. Graves," he called out, his voice steady despite the gun now pointed at his chest. "I think you're making a mistake. The footage you're showing, it's clearly been altered." Graves sneered, but Stephen pressed on, pointing out inconsistencies in the images, explaining the technical impossibilities of what was being shown. As he spoke, he noticed some of the TPF members exchanging uncertain glances. Galen seized the moment. She activated her translator, addressing each TPF member in their native tongue. Her words were gentle but persuasive, appealing to their humanity and explaining how the alliance benefited not just the UNAS, but all of Earth. The combination of Stephen's logical arguments and Galen's heartfelt appeal began to sow discord among the attackers. Some lowered their weapons, doubt clear on their faces. Graves, seeing his control slipping, grew desperate. He grabbed Stephen, pressing a gun to his head. "Enough!" he shouted. "I want all UNAS off this planet now, or I'll kill him." Time seemed to slow. Stephen could feel the cold metal against his temple, hear the hammering of his own heart. Then Galen stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "Take me instead," she said. "Let him go, and I'll go with you willingly." Stephen's eyes widened in horror. "Galen, no!" Before Graves could respond, the studio doors burst open. Captain Baker's team swarmed in, wielding non-lethal UNAS weapons that emitted pulses of energy, disorienting the TPF members. In the chaos that followed, Stephen wrenched himself free from Graves's grip. Without thinking, he threw himself in front of Galen, shielding her with his body as shots rang out. When the dust settled, Graves and his followers were subdued. Stephen stood, his arms still protectively around Galen, their eyes locked in a moment of shared relief and something deeper. As they were led from the studio, Stephen realized that the cameras had captured everything. Their actions, broadcast to the world, had become a powerful symbol of human UNAS unity. In the aftermath of the attack, Stephen and Galen found themselves in a quiet corner of the building, away from the bustle of police and medical personnel. Stephen reached out, his hand gently touching Galen's arm. "Thank you," he said softly, "for being willing to sacrifice yourself for me." Galen's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with emotion. "And thank you for protecting me. It seems we make quite the team." As they stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings, Stephen knew that their relationship had shifted. They were no longer just colleagues or even friends. They had become something more, something that transcended the boundaries between their species. A producer approached, interrupting the moment. "Dr. Turner, Ms. Galen, we're ready to resume the broadcast. The world is waiting to hear from you." Stephen nodded, straightening his rumpled jacket. He looked at Galen, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Shall we?" As they walked back towards the studio, Stephen knew that the road ahead would be challenging. The attack had exposed the depths of the hatred and fear they faced, but it had also shown the strength of their alliance, the power of their connection. Together, they stepped back into the light of the cameras, ready to address a world forever changed by the events of the past hour. The future of human-UNA's relations hung in the balance, and Stephen and Galen stood at its center, their intertwined destinies now inseparable from the fate of two species. The weeks following the foiled TPF attack were a whirlwind of activity. Stephen and Galen found themselves at the center of a global media storm, their actions during the crisis replayed and analyzed endlessly. To their surprise, public opinion began to shift dramatically in favor of the human-UNA's alliance. "I never expected this level of support," Stephen remarked one evening as he and Galen reviewed the latest polling data in his office. The room was bathed in the soft glow of holographic displays, each showing a different news feed or statistical analysis. Galen's multifaceted eyes flickered with amusement. Perhaps humans respond well to displays of unity in the face of adversity. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock on the door. Captain Sarah Baker entered, her posture rigid with urgency. "Dr. Turner, Ms. Galen, I've just received word from the Earth's Governing Council. They're proposing the formation of a human-UNA's cooperative council, and they want you both to co-chair it." Stephen's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "A joint council? That's unexpected." "It's more than that," Sarah continued, her voice tinged with excitement. "They're talking about implementing joint human-UNA's task forces worldwide. Your handling of the TPF situation has convinced them that closer cooperation is the way forward." As the implications sank in, Stephen felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. He glanced at Galen, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "We'll do it," he said firmly. The next few months were a blur of meetings, negotiations, and planning sessions. The human-UNA's Cooperative Council, HUCC, took shape rapidly, with Stephen and Galen at its helm. Their first major initiative was an ambitious environmental restoration project, combining UNA's purification technology with human ecological expertise. On a crisp autumn morning, Stephen stood at the edge of what had once been a heavily polluted industrial zone. Now it was the site of the first environmental restoration center. UNA's purification devices hummed softly, their blue-green energy fields pulsing in rhythm with the Earth's natural electromagnetic field. Galen approached, her steps light on the newly rejuvenated soil. "The initial results are even better than we projected," she said, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "At this rate, we could see full restoration of this area within months rather than years." Stephen nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "It's incredible, and to think this is just the beginning." As they walked the perimeter of the site, discussing technical details and future plans, Stephen became acutely aware of how comfortable he felt in Galen's presence. Their shared experiences during the TPF attack had forged a bond that transcended their professional relationship. Their growing closeness didn't go unnoticed. Whispers and speculation began to circulate among both humans and UNAs. Some saw their relationship as a shining example of interspecies cooperation, while others viewed it with suspicion and concern. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Baker threw herself into her new role as head of the Human-UNA Security Force, HUSF. Her office at HUSF headquarters was a hive of activity, filled with a mix of human and UNA's operatives. "All right, team," Sarah addressed the group assembled before her. "Our mission is to combine the best of both species to create an elite force capable of handling any interspecies threat. It won't be easy, but I know we're up to the challenge." As Sarah drilled her new recruits, pushing them to their limits and beyond, a new issue began to surface that would test the limits of the human-UNA's alliance. Reports of unauthorized human-UNA's intimate relationships started to trickle in, bypassing the official compatibility testing program. The news sent shockwaves through both communities, raising concerns about potential health risks and unforeseen genetic consequences. Stephen and Galen found themselves at the center of yet another storm. Their own relationship, while not explicitly romantic, became a subject of intense public scrutiny. Pressure mounted for them to undergo additional compatibility tests, to serve as a model for potential human-UNAS couples. "This is ridiculous," Stephen fumed as he paced his office. "Our personal lives shouldn't be subject to public debate." Galen watched him with a mixture of concern and something deeper, unspoken. "Perhaps," she said softly, "this is an opportunity to lead by example." Before they could decide how to address the issue, an urgent message arrived from the UNA's homeworld. A series of massive solar flares threatened to destabilize their planet's atmosphere, potentially rendering large portions of their world uninhabitable. In an emergency HUCC meeting, holographic images of the UNA's homeworld filled the air, showing the encroaching devastation. Stephen's mind raced, analyzing the problem from every angle. "We could adapt our planetary defense technology," he proposed, his voice gaining strength as the idea took shape. "If we modify it to create an energy shield, we might be able to deflect the solar radiation." Galen's eyes lit up with understanding. "Yes, and if we combine it with UNA's atmospheric stabilization techniques, we could potentially save large portions of the planet." As they began to plan the mission to the UNA's homeworld, tensions on Earth escalated. Some human factions argued vehemently against diverting resources to help the aliens. TPF sympathizers seized on the situation, spreading propaganda about the UNAs attempting to steal Earth's defense systems. Amid the growing controversy, Stephen and Galen worked tirelessly in a specially designed lab, pushing the boundaries of both human and UNA's scientific knowledge. Long nights blended into early mornings as they raced against time to modify the planetary defense technology. One evening, as they took a rare break from their work, Stephen found himself studying Galen's profile in the soft light of the lab. She turned, catching his gaze, and for a moment the air between them seemed charged with unspoken emotion. Before either could speak, an alarm blared through the facility. Captain Baker's voice came over the intercom, urgent and focused. "Dr. Turner, Ms. Galen, we've uncovered a plot by TPF remnants to sabotage the planetary defense system. We're mobilizing to secure the launch site, but I need you both to prepare for immediate departure." Stephen and Galen exchanged a look of dedication. As they hurried to gather their equipment and research data, the weight of their mission pressed upon them. The fate of the UNA's homeworld, and perhaps the future of human-UNA's relations, rested on their shoulders. Outside, the night sky was alive with activity as HUSF units scrambled to secure the perimeter. Stephen and Galen boarded the joint human-UNA's spacecraft, their hearts racing with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. As the engines roared to life, Stephen glanced at Galen, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared grit. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The spacecraft lifted off, streaking into the star-studded sky, carrying with it the hopes of two worlds and the promise of a future yet to be written. As the spacecraft hurtled through the vast expanse of space, Stephen couldn't help but marvel at the sight before him. The UNA's homeworld loomed large in the view screen, its swirling atmosphere a tapestry of blues and greens. But the beauty of the alien planet was marred by the ominous flashes of solar radiation that streaked across its upper atmosphere. "Captain Baker, we're detecting a significant increase in solar activity," reported the sensor officer, her voice tense. "The radiation levels are off the charts." Sarah Baker's face hardened as she processed the information. "Initiate emergency protocols. Divert all non-essential power to our shields." The ship shuddered as it entered the outer edges of the radiation field. Warning klaxons blared, and red emergency lights bathed the bridge in an eerie glow. In the science lab, Stephen and Galen worked feverishly to recalibrate the planetary defense system. Their hands flew over the holographic controls, making minute adjustments to compensate for the intensified solar flares. "We need to boost the radiation absorption capacity," Stephen muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. Galen's multifaceted eyes flickered rapidly as she processed the data. "Agreed. If we reroute power from the secondary emitters, we can increase the shield's density by 17%. As they reached for the same control panel, their hands brushed against each other. For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. Stephen felt a jolt of electricity course through him, and he found himself lost in Galen's alien yet captivating gaze. The spell was broken by Captain Baker's voice over the intercom. Dr. Turner, Ms. Galen, status report. Stephen cleared his throat, his cheeks flushing slightly. We're making progress, Captain. The system should be ready for deployment once we reach the planet's orbit. As they continued their work, a new alert sounded on the bridge. Captain, sensors are picking up an unidentified vessel following us, reported the tactical officer. It's maintaining distance but matching our course and speed. Sarah's eyes narrowed. TPF, she wondered aloud. Enhance security measures. I want a mixed human UNA's team guarding the defense system at all times. The tension on the ship ratcheted up as they approached the UNA's homeworld. As they entered orbit, a transmission came through from the planet's surface. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Zara, the UNA's Minister of Science. Her iridescent scales shimmered as she spoke, her voice a mix of gratitude and underlying skepticism. Welcome, Earth allies. We appreciate your swift response to our crisis. I trust your technology will prove effective in our hour of need. Stephen stepped forward, his voice steady despite the pressure. Minister Zara, we're confident that our combined efforts will protect your world from these solar flares. As the team began the delicate process of deploying the planetary defense system, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. A group of UNA's conservatives, led by the stern-faced Elder Krell, had gathered at the installation site. We will not allow our world to be contaminated by human technology. Krell's voice boomed across the assembly area. Our ancestors protected this planet for millennia without outside interference. Stephen watched as Galen tensed beside him, her usually calm demeanor visibly strained by the confrontation. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder before addressing the crowd. I understand your concerns, Stephen began, his voice carrying across the murmuring throng, which is why I propose we incorporate your traditional energy-focusing crystals into our design. By blending our technologies, we can create a system that honors your traditions while providing the protection your world needs. The proposal sent a ripple of surprised murmurs through the crowd. Even Elder Krell seemed taken aback by the suggestion. As they integrated the UNA's crystals into the defense grid, Stephen and Galen made a startling discovery. The unique properties of the crystals, when combined with the human technology, created an unexpected resonance effect. This is incredible, Galen exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. The power output has increased by over 200%. Stephen's elation was tempered by a sudden realization. Wait, he said, his voice tight with concern. If we don't properly control this energy, it could destabilize the planet's magnetic field. As they grappled with this new challenge, Captain Baker's voice crackled over their comms. Dr. Turner, we have a situation. The unidentified ship has revealed itself. It's a TPF vessel, and they're making demands. Stephen's blood ran cold as he heard the familiar voice of Marcus Graves. This is your last warning. Dissolve this farce of an alliance, or I'll ensure this planet burns. The stakes had never been higher. As Captain Baker mobilized the HUSF to confront the TPF threat, Stephen and Galen raced against time to activate and calibrate the supercharged defense system. There's only one way to achieve the precision we need, Stephen said, his voice filled with perseverance. We need to establish a direct neural interface with the system. Galen's eyes locked onto his, understanding the immense risk such a connection would entail. We'll do it together, she said firmly. My UNA's physiology is crucial for this to work. As they prepared for the dangerous mind meld, the space above the UNA's homeworld erupted into chaos. HUSF ships engaged Graves's vessel in a desperate battle to prevent a catastrophic impact. Stephen and Galen positioned themselves within the central control hub of the defense grid. As technicians attached a web of sensors to their bodies, Stephen reached out and grasped Galen's hand. Ready? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Galen's multifaceted eyes met his, filled with a mix of fear and dedication. Ready? They activated the neural interface, and suddenly, their minds were flooded with an overwhelming torrent of data and energy. Their consciousness expanded, merging with the vast network of the planetary defense system. Through their combined perception, they could feel the pulse of the UNA's world beneath them, the searing heat of the approaching solar flares, and the intricate dance of energy flowing through the defense grid. As Stephen and Galen struggled to maintain control of the immense power coursing through their joined minds, the battle between HUSF and TPF raged in the skies above. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, with the outcome resting on the success of this unprecedented fusion of human, UNAs, and machine technology. In that instant, their individual identities blurred, merging into a singular consciousness that spanned the entire defense network. Stephen gasped as his awareness expanded exponentially. He could feel the pulsing energy of the UNA's homeworld beneath him, sense the searing heat of the approaching solar flares, and perceive the intricate dance of power flowing through every conduit of the defense grid. Beside him, Galen's multifaceted eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as she too experienced this unprecedented fusion of minds. Together they began the delicate process of calibrating the defense system. Their merged consciousness allowed them to manipulate the planet's energy fields with astonishing precision. They directed the amplified power through the UNA's crystals, weaving a protective shield around the planet with the finesse of master artisans. As they worked, Stephen became acutely aware of Galen's presence within their shared mental space. Her thoughts flowed alongside his, alien yet familiar. He could sense her willpower, her fear, and something deeper, an intense connection that transcended their physical forms. In orbit above the planet, chaos erupted. Captain Baker's voice crackled over the comms, her words tense but controlled. HUSF fighters, engage the TPF vessel. Use pattern Delta 7. Let's show them what our joint tactics can do. The space around the UNA's homeworld became a battlefield. HUSF ships, piloted by both humans and UNAs, executed complex maneuvers that left the TPF vessel struggling to keep up. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, punctuated by the occasional explosion of a disabled fighter. Marcus Graves, his face contorted with rage, appeared on the HUSF command ship's view screen. "You leave me no choice, Baker," he snarled. "If I can't have this victory, no one will." A shudder ran through the TPF ship as Graves activated a device that pulsed with an ominous, oscillating energy. Captain Baker's eyes widened in recognition. "A gravitational disruptor," she breathed. "All ships brace for impact." The effects were immediate and catastrophic. Space itself seemed to warp and twist around the TPF vessel. HUSF ships closest to the distortion field began to break apart, their hulls unable to withstand the conflicting gravitational forces. On the planet's surface, Elder Krell led a group of UNA's conservatives towards the central control hub. "We must stop this abomination," he declared, his scales filled with indignation. "Our world cannot be saved by forsaking our heritage." As they approached the facility, Minister Zara stepped into their path, flanked by a contingent of UNA security forces. Her voice rang out, clear and authoritative. "Elder Krell, I cannot allow you to interfere with this mission. The fate of our world hangs in the balance." Krell's eyes narrowed. "You overstep your authority, Minister. The will of the people—" "The will of the people," Zara interrupted, "is to survive. Guards, detain them. Peacefully, if possible." As the conservative faction was led away, Stephen and Galen remained oblivious to the external conflicts. Their merged consciousness had delved deeper into the planetary defense system, pushing it beyond its original parameters. The shield began to take shape, a shimmering barrier of energy that rose from the planet's surface and stretched into the upper atmosphere. But as their minds intertwined more closely with the technology and each other, something unexpected began to occur. Memories flowed between them. Stephen's childhood on Earth, Galen's early years on the UNA's homeworld. Emotions, once private, became shared experiences. And at the cellular level, their bodies began to change. Stephen's skin took on a faint, iridescent sheen, while Galen's scales softened, adopting a more pliable texture. Their physical forms, like their minds, were merging into something entirely new. In orbit, Captain Baker faced a critical decision. The gravitational weapon threatened not only her fleet, but the planet below. With unyielding commitment, she opened a channel to her tactical officer. "Prepare to execute Operation Firewall. We'll use a localized version of the planetary shield to contain that weapon." The HUSF ships moved into position, their energy projectors aligning with practiced precision. At Baker's command, they fired, creating a bubble of protective energy around the TPF vessel. The gravitational distortions, trapped within the field, began to tear the ship apart from within. On the planet's surface, the solar flares reached their peak intensity. The partially formed planetary shield buckled under the onslaught of radiation. Stephen and Galen, their combined consciousness now inseparable from the defense network, pushed themselves to the limit. Their shared mindscape became a storm of calculations, adjustments, and raw willpower. Together, they poured their merged essence into the shield, reinforcing it with the very fabric of their beings. The barrier solidified, deflecting the harmful radiation and saving the Una's homeworld from certain devastation. As the immediate threat passed, Minister Zara approached the central control hub. Her eyes widened as she saw Stephen and Galen, their bodies subtly altered, still connected to the neural interface. "By the ancient stars," she whispered, realizing the implications of what she was witnessing. She activated her communicator, her voice urgent. "This is Minister Zara. I need a team of our top xenobiologists here immediately. We may be on the brink of a breakthrough in human-Una's relations." In orbit, Captain Baker surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The TPF ship, contained within the energy bubble, had gone silent. She turned to her communications officer. "Contact the HUCC. Tell them everything." As news of the event spread, the implications began to ripple across both human and Una societies. The successful defense of the planet, the defeat of the TPF threat, and the unprecedented merging of human and Una's biology heralded a new era in interspecies relations. In the control hub, Stephen and Galen remained locked in their shared consciousness, their bodies continuing to exhibit traits of both species. Their minds, expanded beyond normal perception, glimpsed potential futures, visions of a galaxy where the line between human and Unas had blurred into a new hybrid species capable of incredible feats. As teams of scientists and medical experts gathered to study the phenomenon and attempt to safely disconnect the pair, one thing became clear. The relationship between humans and Unas would never be the same again. The future, with all its uncertainty and promise, beckoned. The future, with all its uncertainty and promise, stretched before them like an unexplored frontier. As Stephen and Galen remained locked in their shared consciousness, their bodies continued to exhibit traits of both species, a living testament to the unprecedented fusion of human and Una's biology. Dr. Alara Voss, a renowned xenobiologist, stepped into the control hub, her eyes widening at the sight before her. "Fascinating," she breathed, taking in the iridescent sheen of Stephen's skin and the softened texture of Galen's scales. She turned to Minister Zara, who stood nearby. "We need to begin the extraction process immediately. Their neural pathways are becoming more intertwined by the second." As Dr. Voss and her team of human and Una's experts set up their equipment, Captain Baker's voice crackled over the comm system. "Minister Zara, we've secured Graves and his crew. The HUCC is sending a containment vessel for transport." Zara nodded, her attention split between the orbital situation and the delicate operation unfolding before her. "Understood, Captain. Keep me informed of any developments." The extraction process proved to be a Herculean task. Dr. Voss and her team worked tirelessly, using a specialized bioelectric field generator to slowly separate the neural connections binding Stephen and Galen to each other and the planetary defense system. Days passed, each hour marked by the steady beep of monitoring equipment and the low hum of the field generator. Outside the medical facility, tensions rose as Elder Krell led a group of conservative Unas in protest. Their chants echoed through the streets, a cacophony of fear and resistance against the changing tide of human-Unas relations. On the fifth day of the extraction process, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Voss rushed to Stephen and Galen's side, her face pale with concern. "Their vital signs are fluctuating wildly," she reported to Minister Zara. "We need to stabilize them, or we risk losing them both." As the medical team fought to save Stephen and Galen, a crisis unfolded in orbit. The containment vessel sent to transport Graves and his TPF crew malfunctioned, causing the gravitational bubble holding them to destabilize. Captain Baker's voice, tight with tension, filled the command center. "Minister Zara, we have a situation. The prisoners are at risk of breaking free. Zara's mind raced, weighing options and potential consequences. Captain, use the prototype Una's stasis field. It's our best chance at containing them. The gamble paid off. The TPF ship froze in time and space, its occupants suspended in a moment between heartbeats. But the ethical implications of using such technology on sentient beings sent ripples of unease through both human and Una's communities. As Stephen and Galen's extraction reached its final, critical phase, their shared consciousness experienced one last vision. They saw a future where human Una's hybrids served as a living bridge between the two species, ushering in an era of unprecedented cooperation and advancement. The vision sent a surge of energy through their neural link, overloading the bioelectric field generator. The energy pulse triggered something ancient and forgotten. Deep beneath the medical facility, a piece of long-dormant Una's technology hummed to life, sending out waves of unknown energy that interfered with the extraction process and affected the protesters outside. Dr. Voss's voice cut through the chaos. "Minister, we're losing them. The ancient device is disrupting our equipment. We can't complete the separation." Minister Zara stood silent for a moment, her scales shifting colors as she grappled with a difficult decision. Finally, she spoke, her voice heavy with the weight of her choice. "We must use the forbidden technique. A group neural link is our only option." Volunteers from both human and Una's medical teams stepped forward, ready to join their minds with Stephen and Galen. As the link was established, a collective gasp echoed through the room. Memories, emotions, and experiences flowed between them, breaking down barriers of species and individual identity. With their combined mental strength, they guided Stephen and Galen back to individual consciousness, while simultaneously interfacing with the ancient Una's device. As the connection to the planetary defense system was severed, the ancient technology released a final pulse of energy that washed over the facility and the protesters outside. Elder Krell, caught in the wave of energy, stumbled as his mind was briefly linked with the others. His eyes widened as he glimpsed the vision of unity and progress that Stephen and Galen had shared. The experience shook him to his core, challenging his long-held beliefs about human-Una's relations. Inside the facility, Stephen and Galen slowly opened their eyes, blinking in the harsh light of the medical bay. Their bodies, still a unique blend of human and Una's characteristics, felt foreign and familiar all at once. Dr. Voss approached them, her face a mixture of relief and scientific curiosity. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. Stephen's voice was hoarse as he replied, "Like we've been reborn." Galen nodded in agreement, her multifaceted eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that transcended words. As news of the events spread across Earth and the Una's homeworld, the HUCC convened an emergency session. The unprecedented developments in human-Una's relations demanded immediate attention and careful consideration. Minister Zara, exhausted but resolute, prepared to address both species about the recent events. She turned to Stephen and Galen, who were still adjusting to their hybrid physiology. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Your experiences, your very existence, will shape the future of our relations." Stephen and Galen exchanged a glance, a wordless communication passing between them. They stood, their forms a living symbol of what was possible when two species came together. As they followed Minister Zara to the podium, they knew that their journey was not nearly finished. The galaxy watched and waited, poised on the brink of a new era of interstellar cooperation and discovery. Understanding and cooperation. The galaxy watched and waited, poised on the brink of a new era of interstellar cooperation and unity. As Stephen and Galen prepared to address both species, their bodies trembled with exhaustion. The intense hybridization process had taken its toll, leaving them physically weakened. Dr. Voss approached, her face etched with concern. "Minister Zara, I must advise against any public appearances at this time," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Their condition is still unstable. They need rest and further observation." Stephen's iridescent skin pulsed with a faint glow as he turned to the doctor. "We appreciate your concern, Dr. Voss, but this can't wait. Our message is too important." Galen nodded, her softened scales shifting color with the movement. We've come too far to stop now. The future of both our species depends on this moment. Minister Zara looked between the hybrid pair and the doctor, weighing the risks. After a moment, she nodded. Very well, but we'll take precautions. The HUCC quickly organized a joint assembly on a neutral space station orbiting between Earth and the UNA's homeworld. As Stephen and Galen made their way to the podium, they leaned on each other for support, their steps slow but determined. The assembly hall fell silent as the hybrid pair came into view. Humans and UNAs alike stared in awe at the living embodiment of their combined potential. Stephen's skin shimmered with an otherworldly light, while Galen's eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Stephen began to speak, his voice carrying a new resonance that seemed to touch both human and UNAs on a primal level. We stand before you today as living proof of what our species can achieve together. Galen seamlessly continued, her words intertwining with Stephen's in perfect harmony. We have seen a future where the boundaries between us fade, replaced by understanding and shared purpose. As they spoke, recounting their shared experiences and the vision of unity they had glimpsed, their bodies began to change once more. A soft, pulsating glow emanated from their skin, spreading throughout the assembly hall like a gentle wave. The energy touched every being present, human and UNAs alike. Gasps of surprise echoed through the chamber as a momentary psychic link formed, connecting all minds in a shared experience. For a brief, profound moment, the entire assembly saw through Stephen and Galen's eyes. They felt the exhilaration of minds merging, the raw power of the planetary defense system, and the awe-inspiring potential of a truly united galaxy. As the vision faded, the assembly erupted into excited chatter. Long-held prejudices crumbled in the face of this new understanding. Humans and UNAs turned to each other with newfound respect and curiosity. Minister Zara stepped forward, her scales shimmering with emotion. In light of what we have all experienced, I propose an immediate series of initiatives to further human-UNA's integration. The Earth's Governing Council representative nodded in agreement. We second this proposal. Let us begin with joint scientific projects, cultural exchange programs, and the establishment of hybrid communities. As the assembly buzzed with excitement, Minister Zara raised her hand for silence. There is one more announcement. In recognition of their unique role in bridging our species, we hereby create the position of Ambassadors of Unity. The Earth representative continued, and we jointly name Stephen and Galen as the first to hold this title. They will oversee the continued cooperation between humans and UNAs, guiding us into this new era of interstellar relations. Stephen and Galen stood tall, their bodies now fully stabilized in their hybrid form. They turned to face each other, eyes meeting in a moment of shared understanding and deep connection. Without a word, they leaned in, sealing their personal and professional union with a kiss that bridged the gap between their species. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound of human voices and UNA's vocalizations blending into a harmonious roar. As the noise died down, Stephen and Galen faced the assembly once more. Stephen spoke, his voice filled with hope and commitment. This is just the beginning. Together, we will forge a future brighter than any of us could have imagined alone. Galen added, we invite all of you to join us on this journey. Let us learn from each other, grow together, and build a galaxy where diversity is our greatest strength. The assembly concluded with a standing ovation, humans and UNAs alike rising to their feet in a show of unity. As Stephen and Galen made their way off the podium, supported by each other and buoyed by the energy of the crowd, they knew that their work was nowhere near the end. The path ahead would be challenging, filled with obstacles both expected and unforeseen. But as they looked out at the sea of faces, human, UNAs, and everything in between, they felt a surge of hope. The future they had glimpsed in their shared consciousness was within reach, and they were ready to guide both species toward it, one step at a time. As they left the assembly hall, Dr. Voss approached them, her face a mix of concern and excitement. I need to run some tests, she said, eyeing their now stabilized hybrid forms. The implications of your final transformation are, well, they're beyond anything we've seen before. Stephen and Galen exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. They nodded in unison, ready to face whatever came next in their extraordinary journey.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.